incredibly dynamic, beautiful, iconography rich, symbolically rich culture, really. It's enriched me. It's made me even deeper, broader, more colorful. And so here, you know, it's funny when I said roots and you clarified me on that. See, I am American and that's a big deal. So roots is basically ancestry here, and that might be some of the Southern in me. It's the local colloquialisms. And so how do you tie in all of this in the dream realm? There's a key here, and you know this, that one thing we all have access to is dreams. And this is a personal experience. Yes, one can look through collective ideas of archetypes and symbology, and all that stuff breaks down to, again, your set of symbols and your personal roots, your personal heritage, your personal genealogy, your personal relationship with ancestors that you may not realize are ancestors. This all comes through the dream realm. And the dream realm is influencing us in ways, I think, a lot of people, unless they study them, and in this audience, this is a big talk. I started long ago, many years ago, with a dream and consciousness show called Nox Mente. And this is where I have learned many things in that realm that when I came out of a learning cycle and then was in the world and went to learn something formally that I was interested in, that I learned in dream world, I found out that I learned everything correctly. And this happened more than once with me. So what are your ideas on the dream space?
Yeah, well, certainly for me, the dreaming is a very important, integral part of my own spiritual life. And a lot of the communication, both from, the spirits of the dead, and other numinous forces often will happen in my dream life. And I would argue that being able to navigate that relationship to your dreaming life is really important as an occultist, and being able to understand what is a numinous dream, something that is significant, and what is a more, a function of your own psychological catharsis, or, that kind of aspect of the dreaming, which is a more psychological space, and it overlaps. That's the confusing thing about dreams, is it is liminal. It's something so in between, and it does intersect with the spiritual world, undoubtedly. And being able for me to navigate what is a spiritual dream, what is a communication from a spiritual being, and what is maybe just a manifestation of anxiety, what is a warning, sort of a precognitive type dream versus something that's just a nightmare. This uncertainty, and learning how to work with that's a skill in its own way, and certainly for me, as a magical practitioner and a medium, the dreams are a vital avenue for information, and communication from various spiritual beings, both known and unknown. Sometimes I will even receive contacts from beings that I haven't sought out any conscious contact. I have some communication from various beings. What I would say is that not everything that glitters is gold. Sometimes the things that happen in that space should not be followed up, should not be explored for various reasons. That might not be a good thing. You might have what you think is a precognitive dream. You might have something that seems like it's a good idea, but then turns out to be an awful idea. Yeah. that's come out of a dream. It's not all clear sailing. It's a skill. I definitely think it's a skill to navigate the dreaming phenomenon, the experience of it. But as an occultist, it's cornerstone, because so much of the feedback that you get from various magical procedures and spiritual activities will happen in dreams. Whether that is in the form of a psychic attack. If you've been developing your sensitivity, a psychic attack will then usually first manifest in a dream. And certainly if you've been developing your spiritual framework, or you have, shall we say, a spiritual network around you of beings that are caring for you, they will communicate that information to you very soon, so that you can deal with, say, a psychic attack before it ever has. There's no opportunity for it to become physical. It doesn't manifest, because it first is shown to you in a dream, and so you can take care of it. So that's a very practical use of the dreaming facility. And then, of course, if you do magical work and spiritual work and ritual work in various ways, any magician worth their salt will have had this experience of having immediate dream feedback. You might do something, a ritual that's very martial, that invokes the spirit, the being Mars, or the angels, or the spirits of Mars in some way, and then have a very martial dream. I would dream about giant scorpions, or big red dragons, or these kinds of things, and in a very distinctive way. This is not a normal dream. This is so numinous and powerful and potent. And it's it's a great diagnostic tool, I find, for contacting spiritual beings. And of course, just as you mentioned, you do get taught things, yeah, for sure. I myself, I've had many experiences where I very recently had a dream where firstly it was revealed that there was a psychic attack of some sort, and then in that same dream was shown how to deal with it, what to do, how to resolve it. I was shown a very detailed remedy for it, a ritual to do. And so I woke up the next morning and did the remedy, problem solved. So when you become proficient at it, then it's really priceless. It is priceless, but it does take work. It takes work like everything, But for me, I would count it as one of the main tools in my toolbox.
Yes, absolutely. And I have always been a great advocate of the power of lucidity and awakening within the dream, and trying to make that a goal, because there's something magical that happens that crosses these barriers, these membranes of consciousness, when one does. And it is beyond the realm of language. It is beyond sometimes the realm of some people to cognitize even. There's something that goes on. But that we could go down that path another time. I want to follow this psychic attack situation. So I love to talk about this, because I think most people, common folk, do not realize how prevalent this is. And the Malucha, so I have a 1/4 Sicilian in me, and so I feel that strong. I think one only needs a 4th Sicilian to feel Sicilian. It's like a lot of garlic in a soup. You notice it. And so the Malucha, the evil eye, the ill wind, all this stuff with psychic attack, this is happening at a greater level than I have in my life ever seen. And I can look around and see the subtleties of it in somebody's lives. And usually the lives of people we know well, when things start to kind of go awry, and you just notice these telltale signs. So let's talk about psychic attack right now. And I will remind you that we are going to get into the Divine Gypsy Mother. This is all weaving together into one tapestry. But psychic attack is a big deal, and the cards are part of how we divine this, part of how we find remedies for this, part of how we navigate this. But how can psychic attack look in the different ways it can play out in our life? And so we just talked about how we can encounter that energy in the dream realm. What else is there to say here, Balthazar?
Yeah, well, I'm in a peculiar position because I work professionally as an occult consultant, you could say, and of course I'm a reader, but I do magical services for people, and I work a lot with. I'm in that culture, where there are a lot of magicians, a lot of occultists. And so and then if you become a bit more visible, you also become a bit more of a target. And then also, if you're a more disagreeable person, which I can be, unfortunately, I can be quite opinionated. And then people also don't like that. So I'm a bit more in the line of fire. And so as a result, it's a more normal thing for me to experience. Unfortunately, it's a bit like, I guess, a doctor or a nurse might be more, around catching weird viruses and things because they're around sick people.
Yes.
So I kind of look at it that way. So that's something that I've unfortunately have to deal with more and work, encounter and so on. You've got to strike a balance between being aware of it and learning how to deal with it, and not letting it make you go crazy. Right, because there is also an aspect of it which can get quite paranoid, where people, and I see this a lot too with occultists and people in the African diaspora traditions, starts bordering a bit on a mental illness.
Yes,
where people think that everyone is, doing psychic attacks or magical attacks or black magic or what against them or witchcraft or something, and so it can become a preoccupation. So
sometimes that's real, though. That's gang stalking, and it is real.
It is real. No, it definitely is real. Believe you me, this is true, and I see it also. Of course, people coming to me for this is one of the reasons people will come to me to have this diagnosed and resolved. And incidentally, there is in the Divine Gypsy Mother, the manual for that for this book and deck that I've done with Scarlet Imprint. I have a fairly detailed method using the gypsy cards for divining psychic attack, which I wanted to include because that's not something you see very often in any tarot books or any Lenormand books or gypsy card books. Not that there are that many gypsy card books in English. I think mine will be one of the first ones in English. But I wanted that in there so that there was a technique that people could look for and use that was reliable. And what I would say is that in terms of spotting a psychic attack, something that is a real thing. Of course, there are different kinds of psychic attacks. There is what you might call the evil eye, Malochia, which we just talked about with your Sicilian heritage. And that would be a psychic attack that's unintentional usually. That is when someone has the ability to, let's say, curse you with a glance by looking at you with malice. Yeah. And some people have this ability. They can influence you in that way. Often it's through jealousy or resentment that they can basically zap you, and that can have the same effect as a kind of a curse. Yeah, and this is it really is a thing. It's a real thing. Yeah, that's why in the Middle East and in these places, also in Africa, the evil eye is taken very seriously. There's a lot of beliefs and traditions around curing it, cleansing it, countering it, and all these kinds of things. So it's a legit thing. And the thing about that is it's unintentional. The person giving the evil eye might not even know that they do it, or they're not doing it consciously. And sometimes it could even be a relative. It could be your mother who sees you. You may have had an unhappy marriage, and then you get married, and you have a happy marriage. And then she's deep in her heart, she's jealous. She doesn't admit it to herself, but and then she has the ability of the evil eye, and she looks and then she does this thing to you. So that's a thing. It's a real thing in many traditional cultures, including all the way back to ancient Sumeria, which is the first written records. When those Sumerian tablets, that on those tablets there are recipes for curing the evil eye.
It's amazing.
So it's a legit thing. It's old, and it really is a thing. So I think that should be your first port of call. So this could be the evil eye, and then knowing how to cleanse that and resolve that. And there are many remedies. Yeah, there's so many things. And you should, if you're an occultist or someone who consults with people, you should know a few at least, so that you can teach people who come to you. Then the other thing that to keep in mind is that we can pick up influences from people and places and objects, psychic muck, and of course spirits of the dead can adhere to you. You might be somewhere, like say you go to a hospital, and there might be some psychic muck there from the stress or the pain or the suffering there, and that might get stuck on you, and that could have a similar effect. It could make you ill. It could affect your luck. There are various ways of dealing with that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And and you can also pick it up from another person. Someone it might be someone who is in an environment that's very negative, and then they have that stuff around them. The spiritists will call it psychic fluid. There's this fluid around them, this bad psychic fluid. And then by contacting their field, that fluid kind of can come onto you. And often intimate contact, if we're physically intimate with someone, that's a one transmission route. You can get, of course, sexually transmitted diseases, but you can get spiritual sexually transmitted diseases.
Yes.
Because you're opening yourself up in a very intimate way. That can create a transmission of that stuff. That bad stuff. So that would be another thing to be aware of, how to clean that off. Yeah. And then, of course, lastly, there is genuine malefic, malicious witchcraft, which people do. It's a thing. And you just have to speak to anyone who runs a conjure shop or online or brick and mortar conjure shop where they sell stuff to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And they sell it. They're selling tons of that.
Yes.
So there are people buying it, so we can have to assume that there are people doing it. And there are loads of books that teach you how.
Yes.
So that's another
these
thing.
days. Yeah.
Fortunately, most people who do that are quite incompetent. Most attackers, magicians, or even they might do it, but they might not be great at it, and so it could have an effect, but it will usually be quite minor.
Yeah.
And then every so often you just get someone who's really good at it. It could be just that they have a knack. Yeah, they just have a knack for it. And I often will warn people, who might be otherwise spiritually accomplished. I'm a friend of mine who comes to mind who's a priestess in Lukumi, or a Santeria priestess. And the topic came up, and she was like, "Oh, I don't care because I've been initiated, and my orishas take care of me, or whatever." And I said to her, "You never know. There could just be some little lady with a black candle who messes you up."
Yeah.
She has that knack. She's just got that power.
Born to the work. Some people are born to it.
Yeah, they just have that, and they can do it. They can zap you. They can blast the living daylights out of you. You won't. It'll be like being hit by a ton of bricks. And of course, the manifestations for that are